Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. We are jumping right into a super fascinating shift in how we manage our money today. Look, we all live in this age of hyper-convenience, right? Where every digital app promises to just run our lives for us on autopilot. But today, we're actually going to take back control of our money by doing the exact opposite. We're going to explore why ditching those automated algorithm-driven apps for a good old-fashioned pen and paper might literally be the most powerful financial decision you ever make.
So, let me ask you a question, and I want you to be really honest with yourself here. Does your bank balance regularly surprise you? You know, that sinking feeling in your stomach? You open up your banking app, wait for the little wheel to spin, and suddenly the number staring back at you is way lower than you thought it would be. The thing is, if your finances live entirely on a screen, those numbers start to feel completely abstract. They don't even feel like real money anymore. They just kind of feel like pixels.
And that perfectly sets up this whole comparison between being a passive app user and an active manual logger. Think about it. Modern banking apps are incredibly good at buzzing our phones with push notifications every time we spend. But what do we actually do? We just mindlessly swipe them away like we're swatting a fly. We link our accounts, let the algorithm throw our transactions into who knows what categories behind the scenes, and then maybe we look at the damage weeks later. We become entirely passive observers in our own financial lives. But a manual log, well, that forces you to actively process exactly where every single dollar is going.
Which brings us to the core thesis of this explainer, and it's a bit counterintuitive. Friction builds habits. It sounds completely backward, doesn't it? I mean, we're constantly told that automation is always better, always easier. But the reality is that automation rarely changes our actual behavior. When things are too easy, we just stop paying attention. Writing your expenses by hand physically forces you to acknowledge your spending behavior. It puts you right back in the driver's seat.
So, what's the actual tool we're using to do this? It's a printable budget planner. Literally, just a digital file you download, print out on your home printer, and use to physically track your money by filling out the pages yourself. Instead of relying on some software in the cloud to sort your purchases, you are doing the work. You are taking your cash flow off that glowing screen and anchoring it firmly back into the physical world.
Let's move into Section 1, the power of friction and the psychology of paper.
Think about buying your morning coffee. If you tap your phone to pay, the app logs it instantly in the background. You walk out the door, and you've already forgotten you even spent anything. But when you have to manually write down that expense on a paper log, you experience this tiny moment of friction. You physically feel the weight of that purchase in a way an app simply can't replicate. If you have to write down a $6 coffee purchase 4 days in a row, you naturally start questioning that habit, right? That little bit of friction builds genuine financial awareness.
Now, most high-quality printable options are just PDFs packed with a few different templates. And the beauty here is that you can just mix and match these pages like building blocks to fit your specific situation. A standard setup is going to include income trackers for your salary or side hustles, fixed expense logs for those boring static bills like rent and insurance, variable expense trackers for the fluctuating stuff like groceries or those late-night Amazon impulse buys, and finally, goal sheets to help you visualize paying down debt or saving for a vacation.
All right, moving right along to Section 2, setting up your planner.
The sources give us this beautifully simple 4-step blueprint so you can start budgeting physically without immediately burning out. We're going to walk through each of these. Printing only what you need, defining your baseline, setting weekly check-ins, and color-coding your categories.
Step 1 is absolutely crucial. Start small. Seriously, do not print a massive 50-page bundle on day 1. If you do, you're going to feel totally overwhelmed and probably abandon the whole project before the ink even dries. For today, print only what you need: a monthly calendar, an income tracker, and a daily expense log. All those extra pages for sinking funds and debt snowballs, those can absolutely wait until you've nailed down the basic habit.
Step 2 is defining your baseline numbers. You're going to sit down with your recent bank statements and do just that tiny bit of basic math. First, find your total take-home pay. Then, subtract your mandatory fixed costs, things you have to pay, like rent, internet, and insurance. The number you are left with, that's your variable spending pool. That is the actual amount of real money you have to play with for all your daily choices for the rest of the month.
Now for Step 3, consistency. You've got to set weekly check-ins. Pick one specific day to update your numbers. The consensus is that Sunday mornings work perfectly for most people. Picture this. You pour yourself a cup of coffee or tea, open up your banking app, and spend maybe 5 minutes copying your recent transactions over to your paper sheets. Doing this once a week is the magic trick that prevents you from facing a massive, discouraging backlog at the end of the month.
And Step 4 is where it gets really visual.
Color code your categories. Keep a pack of highlighters right next to your planner. You can make groceries green, dining out pink, and entertainment blue. By doing this, at the end of the month, a 2-second glance at the page instantly tells you exactly where your money went. You don't have to read every single line item. Try getting an algorithm to give you that level of instant intuitive clarity.
Which brings us to Section 3, the reality check. Let's talk about some common mistakes.
First up is the perfectionist trap. Look, when you're writing in pen, you are going to make mistakes. So many people just throw their planner in the trash because they messed up the math or wrote a number in the wrong box. Listen to me on this. Let go of perfection. This is a working document. If you make a mistake, just scribble a line through it and keep moving. It is not a museum piece.
Another huge pitfall is overcomplicating your categories. If you create 30 different tiny buckets for your expenses, manually tracking them is going to become a total nightmare. You have to keep your buckets broad. Like, instead of separating Netflix, Spotify, and that one streaming service you only use for live sports, just lump them all together under a simple entertainment category. Keep it easy on yourself.
Also, waiting too long to update your planner is basically a guaranteed way to fail. If you wait until the 31st of the month to log everything, you're going to be staring down this terrifying mountain of receipts. Frequent, small updates are the absolute secret sauce to making this habit stick. Spend 5 minutes every few days rather than 3 agonizing hours at the end of the month.
Now, as you're getting fired up to start, you might be wondering about the logistics. Do you need premium thick paper or a super expensive color printer? Absolutely not. Most of these designs print beautifully in plain old grayscale on whatever cheap printer paper you have lying around. Now, I will say, if you're someone who goes a little crazy with heavy markers, maybe upgrade to a slightly thicker paper just so it doesn't bleed through to the other side. But otherwise, keep it cheap.
Okay, there's one crucial number you need to remember for this entire system. Exactly how long should you hold on to your completed tracking sheets? 1 full calendar year.
Why a full year? Well, keeping your completed sheets for a whole year lets you look back and accurately estimate those irregular annual expenses. You know, those sneaky costs that aren't monthly, but always seem to completely derail our budgets out of nowhere? Things like holiday shopping, a sudden set of new tires, or back-to-school supplies? Having a physical, written record of exactly what you spent last year makes planning for those things this year incredibly accurate.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. We've unpacked exactly why the intentional friction of manual logging beats the passive, forgetful nature of apps. So, I'm going to leave you with this one final thought. Moving forward, are you going to keep being a passive observer and let an algorithm run your financial life? Or are you ready to take back control, build real awareness, and simply pick up a pen? The choice is totally yours. Thank you so much for joining me today. And hey, happy budgeting!